Good morning. Good morning. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. Today is August the 3rd. I'm getting used to remembering that it's a brand new month. August the 3rd, 2021. I'm thrilled to have you guys chiming in. We are on the YouTube live stream. Good to see my friends there on the TikTok live stream and Instagram. The Checkin podcast exists for three reasons. On the Checkin podcast, I aim to grow in awareness of myself. I think this is an ongoing discipline that's really helpful for us to know ourselves really well. So we do that by asking self-reflective questions. So, as I grow in awareness of myself, I also want to maximize my happiness by learning to process all the other necessary emotions along the way, and also to learn to be kind to myself even as I engage in this exercise, because goodness, we already have enough critical thoughts going on in our minds. What does it look like for us to do this in a way that facilitates a really healthy treatment in learning to love ourselves? Today's question, we are asking, what takes up the majority of your time? What takes up the majority of your time? This is one of the questions that helps us reflect on what's going on right now in our lives. I'm going to analyze the question first before I jump in with my own response, considering the merits of said question. And then I'm going to share with you my own thoughts on my experience with it. I see you guys coming in and saying hello and passing your well wishes and your love for me. Thank you so much for doing so. I'm just going to give you waves as I see you coming in and engaging me, saying hello. I see you all. But today, I would love to hear your thoughts as we answer the question. This takes up the majority of your time. This is episode number 23 of the Checkin In podcast. Today is a Tuesday. I hope wherever in the world you are all doing well. Thank you for joining in on this episode. Let's dive into our question on what takes up the majority of your time. This is a good question again, because I love questions that make me think on what's currently going on right now and how can I continue to get better. Yes, I am on live on YouTube as well, Julian. So feel free to catch me there too. Glad to have you guys spending time with me. This is a question that helps me reflect on how my present is going so far, and I love these considerations because I always like to make sure that I'm getting better in the management of my time. There's one thing I've learned the last few years, and that is one of the most important, one of the most non-renewable resources that we have is the resource of time. Non-renewable just because when it's gone, it's gone. These moments that we spend doing whatever we're doing, we can't get them back. And sometimes we might think, hey, that's all right. I'm fine with how my time is going. And I'm okay with the fact that I may not get these moments back. When I hear that, it reminds me of the season that I was in once upon a time when that didn't really resonate with me, by way of, what's the big deal? Time just comes and goes. What's the big deal? We just kind of go through it. But when I think of how that perspective responds to the opportunities that come along the way, it makes me a little bit concerned, because it means that we haven't been able to appraise the time well. It's kind of like someone giving you the gift of, say, a Porsche car, a beautiful Porsche car, and you don't know what kind of car they're going to give you. And you're like, oh, thanks for the car. You don't appraise it as well until you realize the worth of that car. And all of a sudden you say, holy crap, this is no ordinary car. This is not just your Ford or your Toyota or those more accessible brands. This is like a Porsche. This is amazing. That's what I think when I think of those who are saying with time, no big deal. Time comes and goes. It's not a big. But for those of us who have come to understand that time is actually really precious, because when we have it, we can't get it back. And the way we use it, the way we are going to invest our time is so critically important. So critically important because once it's gone, we can't say much for it. And so that's why I love this question. what takes up the majority of your time? As I think of this, I'm thinking, where am I investing my time? How am I using my time? Because these moments that are passing by, they're gone. How can you master positive energy at all times? I don't think it's possible to do that, my friend. And I know sometimes I give that kind of presentation that I'm always positive, and that's not true. And one of the things I go out of my way to try and share with you guys is how, in the midst of many positive moments that I share with you, and I'll share with you why I think it's many positive moments, I also have seasons of discouragement and doubt and fear and all those other necessary emotions that need to be experienced. And so, what I think is a healthier expression is a balance of emotions, because I think all those emotions have a place in our experience. And when we're willing to experience all those emotions in appropriate ways, when we're willing to express our anger appropriately, when we're willing to express our fear, our worry, our all those elements, I think are really important. But as we are willing to experience all of them, we make more space inside here for happiness, for positivity. If we ignore all those other ones that we don't want to experience in here, what tends to happen is those start crowding and taking up space here, taking up that space that could be filled with happiness, those happy moments of pause. That's what my experience has been. So one of the things I do on my website, beniamasters.com/happiness, I've got a resource on there, Sardon, that might be of service to you. It's a brand free. It's absolutely free, and I would love to encourage you to check it out. It's not easy stuff that I share with you there, but it's worthwhile, and it means a lot to me to let you have that resource for free, so you can see and understand how I live in this zone of, it seems perpetual happiness, but it's actually that I'm enjoying all of the emotions, or learning to enjoy all of the emotions for what they are. And so check that out, Sardon, beniamasters.com/happiness. I hope that serves you well. But as I consider where I'm investing my time right now, I am saying, how can I learn to value my time? This time is so precious, and I want to make sure that when I invest it, it has a good return, right? And so this is how I'm thinking about the passing of time for me. As I get older, I think as people get older, we sort of move into this zone of saying, wow, like now's the time to make sure that the way that we're using our time is worthwhile, because in the aftermath, we may find that we are regretting how we used our time. I've seen this often when I attend and facilitate funerals for people, when they are regretting the time that they had that they didn't invest well. Time with those individuals that they were thinking, why didn't I take the time to spend more time with that person? Because now I see how precious time is. Now it's gone. I don't have access to this person anymore. And so they really want to have that time back again so that they can do better. Time to be able to think of nice things to say to someone else who is meaningful in your life, and saying, listen, I want you to know what you mean to me. Before my mom passed away last year, I invested the previous years, and just letting her know, Mom, this is where I want to take the time, the next few moments, to honor you. I want to take the time to say, Mom, you are very meaningful for X, Y, and Z reasons. And that's one of those things that I like to try and do on an ongoing basis. A few days ago, I on my podcast, I was answering questions, something about what am I grateful for in the lives of those who are closest to me. And my kids are sitting in front of me, sort of on their devices right now, doing reading or whatever they're doing. But I had a chance to answer that question with reference to them, and I really appreciate that. That really feeds my soul to know that I have those opportunities to say, "Hey, this is what it means for me to have you in my life." I'm so super thankful for you guys, and I want to do that. In fact, I think I'm going to do that as a video today. Maybe after this podcast, I'm going to make a video just telling you guys how much I appreciate your part in my life. You're not the number one priority for me by any means, because I've got other commitments, but how much I appreciate you guys and the way that you've come alongside to encourage and interact with me. Super appreciate that. So I like how it causes me to reflect on the investment of my time currently. I like how it makes me think about if those investments of time, if those activities in which I'm filling up my time are worthwhile. I like thinking about that carefully and saying, was that a really good use of my time? Why? Because when I do that, it's my way of saying, how can I continue to get better at the discipline and the art of using my time well? You know, it's like when you look on time and you're like, oh, well, that was a waste of time. That's really helpful intel. So we can take that and say, I guess I'll feel discouraged and disappointed and sit around moping about it, or I can choose to be able to shift my pathway and do something more worthwhile. I remember the experience when I was in the first few years on my own. I was really terrible with time management, and I would spend a whole day watching TV, various programs that came on, and I was always hooked because I'm a sucker for a good or even a subpar narrative. And at the end of those couple of days, I just felt really terrible about the way I used my time. I was like, oh, that was really unproductive. And so I didn't want to have that experience. I changed my pattern of engagement and did something different. So that was really important. Sound quality is not sharp and crisp yet, says Sardon on the TikTok. So let me know, the rest of you guys, if you're finding the same thing. We'll see if we can't figure something else out there. But the content is super as usual. Thank you, Sardon. I appreciate those kind words. Final reflection. So I said it's important to consider how we're using our time because once it's gone, it doesn't come back. That when considering how we use our time, it's really well in our interest to ask, is that a worthwhile investment of our time? That's a really good thing. And then thirdly, if you don't like where you see yourself going as you're considering this question, what takes up the majority of your time? Change direction. And that's a beautiful option that you have in front of you. Change direction, because when you see options in front of you, oh man, it enables you to be able to choose the better alternative that seems best to you. These are some thoughts that I have in relation to this very simple question. And along those lines, now is where I jump into the my part of how I think through this question here. When I think about what takes up the majority of my time, there's a few things I could talk about. I work long hours. I work super long hours. 12 to 15-hour days is what I'm usually committing to as an Uber driver. And as I commit to those hours of work, um, that's a long time to spend like at work. That's like, oh man, that's a lot of time invested. And for most people, when you consider that many hours, no, actually, it's not even 5 days anymore. It's about 4 days, 4.5 days a week, because I have my kids about 3 days a week now. By the way, you may see me yawning on the video component, and I love yawning. So when I'm yawning, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm tired. One of those things you need to know about me is I love my yawns because I rate my yawns out of 10 because it's like it's like one of those things I enjoy the experience of. And so usually people think when they see someone yawning, oh, you must be tired. I'm like, I maybe not be. Last night I didn't get much sleep because I was not apportioning my time very well, which is something that I've wanted to address. But Celia says school did take up all my time, but I'm now free for a few months, so I'm now looking after myself and the time off I have. I love that answer, Celia. That's a great investment of time. If you have coffee is what you need right now, brother. Sorry, Don. It can be pretty strong stuff. I've never enjoyed coffee actually. It's Luke. Luke, brother. Nice to see you. Thanks for reminding me. I just recognized the um the username. So yes, I would say even as I think about all the hours I invest in work, that's a really simple answer. Oh my goodness. What takes up the majority of my time? Working does, but actually, that's not a really reflective answer for me. And I'll tell you why that answer doesn't really fit the bill. Working doesn't really fit the bill for me because I do lots of work already on an ongoing basis. Um, there is more behind the work that goes on that is more specific to what I do. So, one way I could say it, yeah, I don't like coffee too, says Luke. I'm not religious, no. Hey, Kristen, nice to see you, my dear friend. One of the things I would say for me personally is see, I do a lot of work, but the work part That's what you're seeing. There's a lot more going in behind the scenes. Let me see if I can give you an analogy. I think no matter what takes up your time, you need to find at least an hour a day to take time for yourself. That's an hour minimum. Okay, Luke, I'm impressed if you're able to do that because that's something I've yet to be able to do. If you are here, then who's driving Uber? There's lots of other people driving Uber. Ubers, my dear friend. Lots of other competent people. Mitchell, it's great to see you. Thanks for popping in. So, let me give you this analogy of the point I'm trying to make. When I was in my English degree, I was writing lots of essays. People would think, man, writing essays is a lot of work. And now there's a lot of work that goes into getting your thoughts onto paper, yes. But I argued that the real work for me wasn't in writing the paper. The real work for me was in thinking about what I'm going to write on the paper. And that's where the heavy lifting is. For me, the heavy lifting is looking at the necessary work that is involved in thinking up the ideas, putting together my arguments, putting that down on paper was the easiest part of it all. Once I did all the crunching up here, now I could just regurgitate it on paper, and that was the real work. So that's the same analogy I want to use for my job. Yes, I spend about 14 to 16 hours a day at my job. And even as I am at my job doing work, driving my Uber, driving all day, that could be considered what I do for the majority of my day. I would say not at all. The majority of the work that I'm doing is thinking. What I do that takes up the majority of my time on a daily basis is thinking. I'm a thinker. I like thinking about deep stuff. I like thinking in such a way that helps me think, how can I do this well so that I don't screw it up? How can I plan my MO, my modus operandi, the way I operate? How can I do that in such a way where I don't have to go backwards and start, fixing things because I got things in the wrong sequential order? So I'm doing a lot of thinking about social dynamics. I'm thinking a lot about how I want to engage people, how I want to interact with them, how I want to set boundaries, and why I want to set those boundaries, and why I want to think through that so I know how to communicate that to other people. I want to think about how to be able to um, respond in different scenarios that are unexpected. This is like one of the disciplines I love committing myself to. So, what I'm doing the most during my investment of my time, yes, there are the components of driving and talking with people and interacting with my errands that I have to get accomplished. All that stuff is important. But in behind the scenes, what's going on at really high speed is I am trying to figure out how can I do this well so that I am on a really good trajectory or a good pathway. What are you streaming on? I'm streaming on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And why do I do this? The three reasons I do this is to grow in self awareness of myself. As I talk about these questions, I'm thinking, I'm getting to know myself a lot better. I've been doing this now. This is episode 23. I feel like I'm growing I'm growing in awareness of how my body operates, how I think, why that's important. All this is important. Secondly, I'm doing this so I can maximize my happiness by processing emotions that needs to be expressed along the way, the whole range of emotions. And thirdly, to learn to be kind to myself because we are not good at being kind to ourselves. Goodness, we are not kind to ourselves in the way we assess. So I'm doing this so that I can grow in that ability. It's okay to ask how much you make a week. I'm planning to start driving Uber soon. Yes, let me put that at the end if I remember. If not, send me a message on TikTok, one of my messages, and I'll see if I can respond in a more public way so others can be served with that answer. But let's keep on topic here with this question. What takes the majority of my time? For me, it's thinking, like heavy duty thinking to understand how can I make what I'm doing count. For example, this podcast is one of the investments for me. I'm like, hey, I want to invest in this not only to serve myself, but also to serve you guys. And so that's an important investment for me. I want to be able to share my experience of how I'm trying to get to be a better version of myself with you guys so you guys can learn to be a better versions of yourselves alongside me as we do this exercise together of answering these kind of questions. And so when I think about that, I'm like, this is a worthwhile investment. This time for me, when I block this time off on weekdays in the morning, it's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of time because I'm, in essence, giving you gifts to say, here's how I think about these questions. Here's why it's important for me to ask these questions. Here's what I want to get out of asking these questions. And just like this user was asking, why do I do this? Great question. A fantastic question. It's like the question we're answering today. What takes up the majority of your time? Why are you even doing this in the first place? Is this worthwhile? Is this A waste of your time. And I would say, hell no. But to get to this conclusion, I had to think for myself and say, but why am I doing this? What am I trying to accomplish? Is this worthwhile for me? And I do this with everything else that I'm doing. Many people say, man, you could do many other jobs that are going to pay you way more. Yes, but I really enjoy what I'm doing with Uber. And I know that I have something specific that I want to get out of my experience with Uber. And so that's why I'm very intentional about that job and going, you should try ASMR. Your voice is satisfying. Thank you. I've heard that a few times. Remind me, guys, at the end, I'll try and tell you about an ASMR opportunity that I'm preparing for coming up soon. So that's what takes up the majority of my time. I feel this is a really important part because even as I engage my world, uh, especially through kindness, I'm trying to figure out how can I do this well? How can I do this well um, so that when I look back, there isn't much room for regret. I don't want to regret my time. I don't want to regret saying, oh man, I wish I'd done something different. So, this for me is one of those considerations that says, hey, with each moment that I'm existing, how can I make that count? I remember a few days ago, I was driving this young couple and we had a great conversation, but by the end of it, I mean, like usually, they're sitting in my Uber still because they just want to talk more. They want to spend more time talking. Most people will say, "Can we just go driving for a while just so we can keep on our conversation?" But the way the young guy said is, I mean, they were both really appreciating the insights that I shared with them. By the way he said it was, it's almost like you're living life on purpose, like with every moment accounted for. And that's how I really feel, that I'm trying to be able to account for every moment, especially starting with a reference point of me. I'm not just thinking in general, thinking, oh, look at that person, what they're doing. Or I'm thinking, okay, where am I at and how am I responding to my world? How am I able to grow to be the next better version of myself, especially in enabling others to be who they are, making their own decisions, making their own choices, and giving them that space to do so while I deal with my own end of my own stuff and what I need to grow through and experience and enjoy. So that's really important for me. I really, really value that. So I spend a lot of time thinking, thinking. If you're inside my headspace, I think you would probably find it exhausting the amount of thinking that I do because I'm coming from as many angles as I can to say, is what I'm doing worthwhile? Is this going to serve others? Is this going to help me get to the destination that I really want to get to? So important, so important. So that's some of the things I want to commit myself to and say, this is worthwhile. So there's so many things I'm already doing in life. I'm hanging out with my kids. But even as I hang out with my kids, I'm thinking, saying, how can I deal with my own insecurities so that I don't affect my kids with my own insecurities? What do I have to do to process my own stuff so that I'm able to serve my kids well, even as I parent them, as I'm a dad to them? How can I grow in my ability so I'm getting to be better in my context as a dad? Like now I'm a much better dad than when I first started. When I first started, I had so many other things that I was trying to deal with while I did the best that I could, right? So that's one of the areas I'm thinking about in the context of being with my kids. How can I make this count so that later on I don't have as much to be feeling regretful for? And then, like I said, with my job, of course, I'm driving, I'm talking to people, I am interacting, engaging, but there's thinking going on, not only when I'm with people, but also when I'm not with people. I'm trying to think, okay, how did that go? Where can I continue to improve? What am I doing well? What can I celebrate? What can I keep an eye on so that I don't lose frame of reference there? These are some things that I think about on an ongoing basis that make me think, how can we have this experience doing well? YouTube is where it can be found. Oh, yeah, that's right. My podcast is on Spotify. TikTok is a live stream, but it doesn't record it. But the Instagram reel does record it, and the YouTube one, you can find it as well. These various episodes. So, those are some of the things I reflect on when I think about where the majority of my time goes. And it means a lot to me to see time well invested. It means a lot because it's almost like a way that I want to honor and respect time. Because when I'm respecting time, I'm also thinking about how am I respecting the time of others. When I ask someone for their time, I want to think carefully about how I'm going to invest that time with them. I want them to also feel that the time that we invested together was worthwhile. There's nothing better for me in feeling than when I hear from others, hey, thank you for sharing this time with me. Like they really value what we did together, and how that went. That's a beautiful thing. I thrive off of that, and it's a great experience. Dear friends, I would love to ask you now, what are your thoughts on the way I invest my time? It's a very simplistic answer that I gave. Basically, I just said the way I invest my time is by thinking, thinking about anything and everything in the way that I engage the world around me. That's how I think. But how do you guys invest your time? Where does the majority of your time go, and how do you see the how do you evaluate that time that you invest in whatever it is that you're doing? For some of you, it might be in music. Maybe you love music, either learning an instrument to play, or perhaps it is listening to music, and that just is your place where you reconnect with yourself. Maybe. I think it's very smart how you invest your time, says Jody. There are not a lot of people who think like you. Thank you, my friend. That's really kind. I appreciate that. I acknowledge those kind words. That's one thing I'm learning to do is how can I also value other people's time when they share with me to share kind words. That's really, really beautiful. I'm going to do that in a TikTok after this podcast here, if I remember, and post that just by way of saying, I want to value the time that I have with you guys, and this is why it's meaningful. Those are some of the reflections I was thinking about when I saw this question come up on my radar. How do I watch the podcast on another app? TikTok, you'll find links to my YouTube and my Instagram, so feel free to check for those. The majority of my time, says Jody, is spent playing video games. It's my escape from reality, unfortunately, and I don't think that's a bad thing. We need an escape from reality sometimes. We need a break from our experience in what life is like. So no need to beat yourself up. If you really enjoy downtime by playing video games, legitimize it and say, hey, this is a really important way that I serve myself. And so that's a beautiful expression there, my friend. I would say, no need to beat yourself about that. My dear friends, thank you for spending these few moments listening to this episode 23 of the Checkin In podcast. There's three reasons I do this, and I love the three reasons deeply. They mean a lot to me. This is what I want to do, to invest in myself and say, wow, this is worthwhile time. Number one, I want to grow an awareness of myself. I wanted to learn to know Benjamin really well so I know how I am going to grow as a person. So the better I know myself, the better I'm able to make really good choices. Number two, I'm doing this because I want to learn to be kind to myself. We are terrible at doing this in this cultural context. We just beat ourselves up. We rip ourselves apart by self-analysis, and then we paralyze ourselves from even going forward to become a better version of ourselves. So if this is you, I would really, I would encourage you to come along. I'll tell you in just a moment how you can come alongside this community that I'm building to be able to build us up and speak positivity into each other's lives, encouragement. That's really important. And finally, to maximize our happiness by learning to process all the painful emotions along the way. So critical, so important. And so I'd love to have you guys experience that. How can you do all this? My website, BennyMasters.com. I've got a membership tier there. I would love to have you join and enable me to give you more specific dedicated time and encouraging you on a regular basis in these three components. VinnyMasters.com, there's a membership tier there. Check it out. Consider which one would serve you well and how I can come alongside to encourage you. This has been episode 23. Thank you for watching, guys. Much love to you all. Can't wait to see you soon. Bye for now.